Sarah's hands trembled as she stood outside the small community center, clutching the folded paper that had changed everything. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot, but she barely noticed the warmth on her face. Her world had been turned upside down 3 days ago when the letter arrived. And now she was about to step into a reality she never imagined possible. At 28, Sarah had lived her entire life in the same small town, working at the local library, and caring for her elderly grandmother who had raised her since she was 5. Her days followed a predictable pattern that brought comfort but little excitement. She cataloged books, helped children with homework, and went home to prepare dinner for Grandma Rose, who had been struggling with memory loss for the past 2 years. The letter had arrived on a Tuesday morning, mixed in with the usual bills and advertisements. The return address meant nothing to her, but the contents had shaken her to her core. Sarah had a younger brother she never knew existed, and he needed her help. Daniel was 23, born after Sarah had been sent to live with her grandmother following their mother's death. Their father had apparently remarried, had another child, but never mentioned Sarah's existence to his new family. When both parents died in a car accident 6 months ago, Daniel had been left alone, struggling with challenges that Sarah was only beginning to understand. The social worker who contacted her explained that Daniel had autism and mild intellectual disabilities. He had been living independently with support services, but recent budget cuts had eliminated many of his programs. He was scared, confused, and had specifically asked to find his sister after discovering old photographs and documents among his parents' belongings. Sarah pushed open the heavy door of the community center, her heart racing with nervous energy. She had spoken to Daniel twice on the phone, brief conversations where his voice sounded young and uncertain. She had no experience with autism, no knowledge of how to help someone with his needs. But something deep inside her had responded immediately. To his situation, the social worker, Mrs. Chen, met her in the lobby with a warm smile that did little to calm Sarah's anxiety. "He's been looking forward to meeting you all week," she explained, leading Sarah down a hallway lined with cheerful posters about community programs. "He's a sweet young man, but he's been through a lot of changes recently. The most important thing is patience." They stopped outside a door marked Activity Room B. Through the small window, Sarah could see a young man sitting at a table, carefully arranging what appeared to be puzzle pieces in precise rows. His dark hair was similar to hers. Something about the set of his shoulders reminded her of old photographs of their father. "This is all new to me," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Chen placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Let me guide you through it," she said, her voice dropping to a reassuring tone. Daniel responds well to routine and clear communication. He may not make eye contact right away, and he might seem focused on his puzzle, but he's listening to everything you say. They entered the room quietly. Daniel looked up briefly, his eyes darting to Sarah's face, before returning to his puzzle. She could see the family resemblance clearly now. They shared the same green eyes and the same stubborn cowlick that had plagued her throughout childhood. "Daniel, this is Sarah, your sister," Mrs. Chen said gently. Daniel's hands stilled over the puzzle pieces. He glanced up again, this time holding her gaze for a few seconds longer. "Sarah," he repeated softly, as if testing the name. "You look like the picture." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. "What picture?" Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, creased photograph. It showed Sarah at her high school graduation, smiling broadly in her cap and gown. She had no memory of this photo, no idea how their father had gotten it. "Dad kept it in his desk," Daniel explained, his voice matter, of fact but tinged with sadness. He said, "I had a sister, but she lived far away." "I didn't understand then." Sarah sat down across from him, fighting back tears. "I didn't know about you either, Daniel. If I had known, I would have tried to find you sooner." They spent the next hour getting acquainted while Mrs. Chen observed from nearby occasionally, offering suggestions or explanations. Sarah learned that Daniel loved puzzles, especially ones with animals or landscapes. He worked part-time at a grocery store, bagging items with meticulous care. He had lived in the same apartment for 3 years. But the support worker who helped him manage daily tasks had been reassigned due to funding cuts. "I can cook mac and cheese and grilled cheese," Daniel told her proudly. "And I can do laundry, but sometimes I forget about the soap." Sarah found herself charmed by his earnest explanations of his routines and capabilities. There was something deeply touching about his desire to show her that he could take care of himself, even while clearly needing help with more complex tasks. When Mrs. Chen mentioned that Daniel's housing situation was becoming precarious, his current apartment was part of a program that was being discontinued, Sarah felt something shift inside her. This young man was her family, her responsibility, but more than that, he was someone who needed love and stability. "What are his options?" Sarah asked. Mrs. Chen's expression grew more serious. "There's a group home with an opening, but Daniel doesn't want to leave his current neighborhood. He's comfortable with his job and his routines. Ideally, he would benefit from living with family who could provide support while maintaining his independence." Sarah looked at Daniel, who was listening intently while continuing to work on his puzzle. She thought about her quiet life with Grandma Rose, the small house that felt too empty since her grandmother's condition had worsened. She thought about all the times she had wished for more family, more connection to the world beyond her small town's borders. How would that work? She heard herself asking. "If he came to live with me?" Mrs. Chen smiled, clearly pleased by the question. "There would be training available, support services to help you both adjust. Daniel is quite capable of self-care with minimal assistance. He mainly needs someone to help with complex tasks like managing finances, medical appointments, and providing emotional support during transitions." Daniel looked up from his puzzle, his eyes bright with hope. "Would I have my own room? Like having my own space for my puzzles?" Sarah felt her heart expand in a way she hadn't experienced since childhood. "Yes," she said firmly, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "You would definitely have your own room." As they prepared to leave that day, Daniel carefully packed up his puzzle, placing each piece in a specific section of his carrying case. Sarah watched his methodical process with growing appreciation for the way his mind worked. Different from hers, but clearly organized and purposeful. "Sarah," Daniel said as they walked toward the parking lot, "will you come see me again soon?" Looked down at this brother she had never known existed, this gentle soul who had already begun to change her understanding of what family could mean. "Very soon," she promised. "We have a lot of catching up to do." 2 weeks after their first meeting, Sarah found herself driving to Daniel's apartment for what might be their last visit there. The small one-bedroom unit had been his home for 3 years, and she could see why he was reluctant to leave. Item had its designated place, from the carefully arranged puzzle collection on built-in shelves to the weekly schedule posted on his refrigerator in neat, block handwriting. Daniel greeted her at the door wearing his grocery store uniform, his name tag polished and perfectly straight. His face lit up when he saw her, though he still maintained the careful distance she had learned was his comfort zone for physical affection. "I made a list," he announced proudly, holding up a notebook with detailed entries written in different colored pens. "Mrs. Chen said I should tell you about my routines so you would understand them." Sarah accepted the notebook with growing amazement at his thoughtfulness. Each page documented a different aspect of his daily life: his work schedule, his preferred breakfast foods, his evening routine of puzzle building and watching nature documentaries, even his system for organizing his clothes by color and season. "This is incredible, Daniel," she said, genuinely impressed by his attention to detail. "This will help me understand how to make you comfortable at home." The word still felt strange when she applied it to Daniel joining her and Grandma Rose, but over the past 2 weeks, Sarah had been making preparations that surprised her with their naturalness. She had cleaned out the spare room that had served as storage, painted the walls a calming blue that the autism support specialist had recommended, and installed better lighting for detailed work like puzzles. More challenging had been explaining the situation to Grandma Rose, whose memory issues made it difficult for her to retain new information. Some days she remembered that Sarah had a brother and was excited about him visiting. Other days she seemed confused about who Daniel was and why Sarah was making changes to their routine. "Tell me about your job," Sarah said, settling into Daniel's carefully maintained living room. "I want to understand what makes you happy there." Daniel's face brightened immediately. I work with Mr. Jim in produce and Mrs. Angela at checkout. They understand that I like to bag the heavy items on bottom and keep cold things together. Customers sometimes get impatient, but Mr. Jim tells them that careful packing is better than fast packing. Sarah could hear the pride in his voice and felt a surge of affection for these coworkers who had clearly taken Daniel under their wing. She had spoken with the store manager the previous week, who had assured her that Daniel was a valued employee and that they would support his continued employment even after he moved. I talked to them about your move, Sarah told him gently. Mr. Jim said they would miss you, but they understand that family is important. They're going to help you transfer to the store in my town. Daniel processed this information quietly, his hands automatically reaching for a small puzzle piece that he turned over and over while thinking. Sarah had learned that this fidgeting wasn't nervousness, but rather how he processed complex emotions or decisions. Will the new store have the same rules? He asked finally. The basic rules will be the same, but you might need to learn some new procedures. Would you like me to visit the store with you before your first day? Daniel nodded emphatically. Yes, please. New places are easier when someone comes with me first. They spent the afternoon going through Daniel's belongings, deciding what would come with him immediately and what could be moved later. Sarah was touched by how few possessions he considered essential. His puzzles, his work clothes, a few favorite books about animals, and a small collection of photographs that included the picture of her he had treasured. The most challenging moment came when they discussed his bedroom setup. Daniel had specific needs for his environment: blackout curtains for better sleep, a particular arrangement of furniture that created clear pathways, and a dedicated space for his puzzles that wouldn't be disturbed. At home, I have a room ready for you, Sarah explained. It's bigger than this room, so we can set it up exactly how you need it. Would you like to see pictures? She showed him photos she had taken of the prepared room, explaining how they could arrange his furniture and belongings. Daniel studied each image carefully, asking detailed questions about lighting, noise levels from other parts of the house, and proximity to the bathroom. Where will Grandma Rose be? He asked, referring to their grandmother by the name Sarah had used when describing their living situation. Her room is downstairs, and yours will be upstairs, so you'll have privacy and quiet space when you need it. But Daniel, I need to tell you something important about Grandma Rose. Sarah had been dreading this conversation, but she knew Daniel needed to understand their grandmother's condition. She explained Alzheimer's disease in simple terms, describing how some days Grandma Rose would remember things clearly, and other days she might be confused or repeat herself. She's not sick because she's sad or angry, Sarah emphasized. Our brain just works differently now, kind of like how your brain works differently from some other people's. The important thing is that she loves family, and she's excited to meet you. Daniel absorbed this information with the same methodical consideration he applied to everything else. Does she get scared when she forgets things? The question revealed Daniel's natural empathy, and Sarah felt a wave of emotion at his immediate concern for someone he hadn't even met. Sometimes she does get scared or frustrated. When that happens, we stay calm and help her feel safe. Do you think you could help with that? I'm good at staying calm, Daniel said, matter-of-factly. I like helping people feel better. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah found herself marveling at Daniel's resilience and adaptability. Despite his need for routine and predictability, he was approaching this major life change with courage, trust that moved her deeply. They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Daniel tensed slightly. Unexpected visitors clearly disrupted his sense of security, but when he saw Mrs. Chen through the peephole, he relaxed. I brought someone to meet you both, Mrs. Chen announced, stepping aside to reveal a woman about Sarah's age, with kind eyes and a warm smile. This is Rebecca Martinez. She'll be your support coordinator once Daniel moves. Rebecca specialized in helping adults with autism maintain independent living skills while receiving family support. She would visit regularly, help with any challenges that arose, and provide resources for both Sarah and Daniel as they adjusted to their new living arrangement. I've heard wonderful things about both of you, Rebecca said, settling into the conversation with an ease that immediately put Daniel at ease. Daniel, Mrs. Chen tells me you're an expert puzzle solver. I'd love to see some of your work. Daniel's face lit up as he showed Rebecca several completed puzzles he kept on display. Sarah watched him explain his techniques and preferences, noting how his communication became more animated when discussing his passion. As the visit wound down, Rebecca addressed some of Sarah's lingering concerns about her ability to provide adequate support. "The most important thing you're offering, Daniel, isn't expertise," she explained. "It's love, stability, and family connection. Everything else we can learn together." That evening, as Sarah drove home through the familiar streets of her small town, she reflected on how dramatically her life was about to change. The quiet predictability she had known for years would be replaced by the beautiful complexity of caring for Daniel, advocating for his needs, and building the kind of family bond she had always longed for. When she arrived home, Grandma Rose was sitting in her favorite chair, working on a crossword puzzle. Her face brightened when Sarah entered. "How's that brother of yours doing, sweetheart?" she asked, her memory surprisingly clear. "He's doing well, Grandma. He's excited to meet you." Rose smiled with the warmth Sarah remembered from childhood. "It's going to be nice having more family around here. This house has been too quiet for too long." Sarah kissed her grandmother's forehead, feeling grateful for these moments of clarity and anticipating the new chapter that was about to begin for all of them. Moving day arrived with unexpected challenges that tested everyone's patience and adaptability. Sarah had planned everything carefully, but she hadn't anticipated how overwhelming the process would be for Daniel, whose need for routine made the disruption particularly difficult. The morning started well enough. Daniel had packed his essential items according to a detailed checklist, with each box labeled in his precise handwriting. He wore his favorite blue shirt and carried his most complex puzzle in a special case, a source of comfort during stressful situations. But as the moving truck arrived and strangers began handling his belongings, his calm exterior began to crack. "They're not putting the boxes in the right order," Daniel said. "Gah," his voice tight with anxiety as he watched. The movers load items without regard for his organizational system. Sarah quickly intervened, explaining to the movers that the box labels weren't just descriptions, but a specific loading sequence that would help Daniel feel secure about the process. The lead mover, a patient man named Tony who had worked with special needs families before, immediately adjusted their approach. "No problem, buddy," Tony told Daniel directly. "Why don't you be my supervisor and make sure we get everything exactly right?" The responsibility of overseeing his own move seemed to help Daniel regain his composure. He stood by the truck with his checklist, carefully marking off each item as it was loaded. Sarah watched him transform from anxious to engaged, and she made a mental note about how giving him control in stressful situations could be helpful. The drive to Sarah's house presented another challenge. Daniel had never traveled this particular route, and the unfamiliar scenery made him increasingly agitated. He gripped his puzzle case tightly and began rocking slightly, a self-soothing behavior that Sarah was learning to recognize. "Would it help if I described what we're passing?" Sarah asked gently. "I know this area really well, and I can tell you about all the places we'll be able to visit together." Daniel nodded, still rocking, but listening intently as Sarah narrated their journey. She pointed out the library where she worked, the park with the duck pond, the ice cream shop that made exceptional sundaes. By the time they reached her neighborhood, Daniel had stopped rocking and was asking questions about each location. "The library has books about animals?" he asked. His interest clearly sparked. "Hundreds of them," Sarah confirmed. "I can show you the children's section where they do puzzle contests during summer reading programs." Grandma Rose was waiting. On the front porch, dressed in her best flowered dress and wearing the pearl necklace that had belonged to Sarah's mother. Her face was alert and welcoming. One of her clearer days, when her memory was sharp and her personality shone through the fog of her condition. Daniel approached the porch slowly, clearly uncertain about this new person, but drawn by her warm smile. Sarah watched nervously, knowing how important this first interaction would be for everyone's comfort level. "It must be Daniel," Rose said gently, remaining seated to appear less intimidating. "I'm your Grandma Rose. Sarah has told me so many wonderful things about you." Daniel studied her face carefully, then reached into his puzzle case and pulled out a small completed puzzle featuring a garden scene with bright flowers. "This is for you," he said simply, offering it with both hands. Rose accepted the gift with genuine delight, examining the intricate details with appreciation. "This is beautiful, Daniel. Did you put this together yourself?" "It has 500 pieces," Daniel said proudly. "It took me 3 days, but I didn't get frustrated because flowers are peaceful to look at." "They certainly are," Rose agreed, patting the chair beside her. "Would you like to sit with me while Sarah gets your room ready? I'd love to hear about your other puzzles." Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion as she watched Daniel settle beside his grandmother, their conversation flowing with surprising ease. Rose had always been good with children, and her natural warmth seemed to translate perfectly to connecting with Daniel's needs. The afternoon was spent unpacking and arranging Daniel's room according to his specifications. Sarah had thought she understood his requirements, but actually implementing them required constant adjustment and patience. The desk had to be positioned exactly 18 inches from the window to provide adequate natural light without glare. His clothes needed to be arranged not just by color, but by frequency of use. His puzzle area required a specific type of lamp that wouldn't cast shadows across his work surface. Rebecca, the support coordinator, arrived in the early evening to check on the transition. She found Daniel in his new room, carefully arranging puzzle pieces, while Rose sat in a nearby chair, watching with fascination. "He's teaching me about sorting techniques," Rose explained to Rebecca. "Did you know there are people who can solve puzzles by edge pieces alone?" "Daniel says that's too easy, so he starts with the most difficult sections first." Daniel looked up from his work, his face more relaxed than Sarah had seen all day. "Grandma Rose has good eyes for colors. She found 3 pieces I was missing." Rebecca observed the interaction with professional satisfaction. "How are you feeling about the move, Daniel?" Daniel considered the question seriously, his hands continuing to work with puzzle pieces as he thought. "Different than home, but good different. My room is bigger, and Grandma Rose likes puzzles. Sarah says I can walk to the library and the ice cream shop. What's been the hardest part so far? The boxes got mixed up, and I couldn't find my toothbrush for a while. But Sarah helped me look, and we found it in the wrong bathroom box." He glanced at Sarah with appreciation. She didn't get impatient when I checked 3 times to make sure it was the right toothbrush. Rebecca smiled, making notes on her tablet. "And Sarah, how are you adjusting?" Sarah reflected on the day's challenges and discoveries. "It's been harder than I expected in some ways, easier in others. I was worried about not knowing enough about autism, but Daniel is really good at explaining what he needs. The hardest part is remembering that his way of doing things isn't wrong, just different." "That's exactly the right attitude," Rebecca confirmed. "Daniel, what would help make tomorrow easier?" Daniel thought carefully. "Maybe if Sarah could show me how to get to the library and the grocery store. I'd like to know the routes before I need to use them." "That's a great idea," Sarah agreed. "We could walk around the neighborhood tomorrow morning, and I could introduce you to some of our neighbors." As Rebecca prepared to leave, she pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. "The transition is going remarkably well. Daniel's ability to communicate his needs and your willingness to adapt to his perspective are both excellent signs. The relationship he's developing with your grandmother is particularly special." That evening, Sarah prepared Daniel's favorite dinner of grilled cheese and tomato soup, served with the precise timing and presentation he preferred. As they ate, Grandma Rose entertained them with stories from her childhood, her memory surprisingly sharp and her storytelling engaging. "You know that your grandfather proposed to me while we were working on a jigsaw puzzle? It was a picture of a mountain lake, and he hid the engagement ring under the final piece." Daniel's eyes widened with delight. "Did you finish the puzzle first, or look at the ring?" "Oh, I finished the puzzle first, of course," Rose laughed. "I couldn't leave it incomplete even for a marriage proposal." Daniel nodded approvingly. That was the right choice. Puzzles should always be finished properly. Later that night, as Sarah tucked Daniel into his new room, he surprised her with an observation that revealed how much he had processed about their new living arrangement. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I think Grandma Rose forgets things sometimes. But she remembers feelings. She remembers that family is important." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes at his insight. That's exactly right, Daniel. How did you figure that out? She couldn't remember my name twice today, but she kept smiling at me the same way. And she remembered that puzzles make me happy even when she forgot what puzzle we were working on. God. Sarah turned off his light, leaving only the small lamp he needed for security. Daniel made one final observation that perfectly captured the significance of their new beginning. This feels like home now, he said simply. It's different from my old home, but still home. Sarah kissed his forehead gently, something he was gradually becoming comfortable with. Good night, Daniel. Tomorrow we'll explore the neighborhood together. Good night, Sarah. Thank you for making me part of your family. Standing in the hallway outside his room, Sarah realized that Daniel had it backwards. He hadn't become part of her family. They had all become part of something entirely new together. Something richer and more complete than any of them had experienced before. 3 months after Daniel's arrival, their new family routine had settled into a comfortable rhythm that surprised Sarah with its naturalness. Daniel's morning ritual of checking the weather, organizing his work clothes, and eating exactly 2 pieces of toast with peanut butter had become as familiar as her own habits. But it was the unexpected moments of connection that continued to amaze her most. The first real test of their bond came on a Tuesday afternoon when Sarah received an urgent call at the library. Grandma Rose had fallen in the kitchen and couldn't get up. Mrs. Patterson from next door had heard the commotion and called 911. But Rose was refusing to let the paramedics examine her properly. Sarah arrived home to find Daniel sitting calmly on the floor beside their grandmother, who was propped against the kitchen cabinets looking stubborn and embarrassed. The paramedics stood nearby, clearly frustrated by their uncooperative patient. She says she only talked to family, one of them explained to Sarah. But she's been asking for someone named Daniel, and we weren't sure who that was. Sarah looked at Daniel in amazement. How did you get here so fast? You were supposed to be at work until 5. Mr. Jim drove me home when Mrs. Patterson called the store, Daniel explained matter-of-factly. Grandma Rose was scared and confused, so I sat with her and did my calming voice like Rebecca taught me. Sarah knelt beside her grandmother, who immediately grasped her hand with surprising strength. Oh, Sarah, I'm so embarrassed. I was trying to reach the good dishes on the high shelf, and I just lost my balance. Are you hurt anywhere? Sarah asked gently, running her eyes over Rose's form for obvious injuries. Just my pride, mostly, and maybe my wrist. Rose held up her left hand, which was already showing signs of swelling. The paramedics were finally able to examine Rose properly, with Daniel's help. He had somehow intuited that she needed familiar faces and calm voices to overcome her anxiety. About the strangers in her house, while they checked her vital signs and examined her wrist, Daniel kept up a steady, soothing conversation about the puzzle they had been working on together. The mountain pieces are the hardest because they're all similar colors, Daniel told Rose as the paramedic wrapped her wrist. But I found 6 edge pieces this morning that will help us with the border. Rose smiled despite her discomfort. You have such a good eye for those tricky pieces, Daniel. I don't know how you do it. Paramedics determined that Rose's wrist was likely sprained rather than broken, but recommended a hospital visit for x-rays to be certain. Sarah felt panic rise in her chest as she imagined navigating a hospital emergency room with both Rose, who became confused in unfamiliar environments, and Daniel, who struggled with unpredictable situations. As if reading her thoughts, Daniel spoke up. I can come with you to the hospital. Hospitals are loud and bright, but I have my headphones, and I can help Grandma Rose remember things if she gets confused. Sarah stared at her brother, struck once again by his intuitive understanding of what others needed. Are you sure? Hospitals can be overwhelming. Daniel nodded seriously. Family helps family. That's what you taught me. The hospital visit tested everyone's patience and coping skills. The emergency room was exactly as Daniel had predicted, loud, bright, and chaotic. Rose became increasingly agitated as they waited, her confusion growing as the familiar environment of home faded from her. Immediate memory, Daniel surprised everyone by taking charge of the situation in his own quiet way. He found a corner of the waiting room away from the main traffic flow and helped Rose get comfortable in a chair. Then he pulled out a small travel puzzle from his ever-present bag and spread the pieces on a nearby table. "This is a picture of a cottage with a garden," Daniel explained to Rose, his voice calm and methodical. "See these pink pieces? Think they're flowers, but I need your help to figure out where they go." The puzzle gave Rose something concrete to focus on, and Daniel's patient presence seemed to anchor her when the hospital environment threatened to overwhelm her. Sarah watched in amazement as her brother transformed from someone who needed support into someone providing it. When Rose's name was finally called, Daniel asked the nurse if he could accompany his grandmother to help keep her calm. The nurse, initially hesitant, agreed after observing how effectively Daniel managed Rose's anxiety in the examination room. Daniel continued his quiet commentary about the puzzle while the doctor examined Rose's wrist. His presence made the difference between a traumatic experience and a manageable one for their grandmother. "Mild sprain," the doctor confirmed, showing them the X-ray images. "She'll need to wear a brace for a few weeks and avoid lifting heavy objects, but there's no permanent damage." Rose looked at the X-ray with interest, her confusion temporarily cleared by curiosity. "Well, would you look at that? I can see every bone in my hand." "Daniel, isn't that fascinating?" Daniel studied the X-ray seriously. "Your bones look strong, Grandma Rose. That's good for puzzle work." The doctor smiled at Daniel's observation. "You're absolutely right. Strong bones are important for all kinds of detailed work." On the drive home, Rose fell asleep in the passenger seat, exhausted by the day's events. Daniel sat in the back, quietly organizing puzzle pieces in a small container, but Sarah could see him watching their grandmother with concern. "You were incredible today," Sarah told him softly. "The way you helped Grandma Rose stay calm. I couldn't have managed without you." Daniel looked up from his puzzle pieces. "She was scared because everything was different and loud. No, what that feels like. So I helped her the way you helped me when I'm overwhelmed." Sarah felt her heart expand with love and pride for her brother. In 3 short months, he had not only adapted to their family, but had become an essential part of it, contributing his own unique strengths to their shared challenges. That evening, as they settled into their usual routine, Rose surprised them, both by asking Daniel to help her write in her journal, a practice her doctor had recommended to help with memory retention. "What should I write about today?" Rose asked, her pen poised over the page. "Write about how you were brave at the hospital," Daniel suggested, "and how we solved 12 puzzle pieces while we waited." Rose smiled as she wrote, her handwriting shaky due to the wrist brace, but her thoughts clear. "Today I fell down, but my family helped me get back up. Daniel took care of me when I was scared, and Sarah made sure I was safe. We are lucky to have each other." She showed them the entry, and Daniel nodded approvingly. "That's a good story, Grandma Rose. Should I tell you about tomorrow's plan so you can remember it?" As Daniel explained their schedule for the following day, complete with contingency plans and alternative activities in case Rose's wrist was more painful, Sarah realized that her initial worry about her ability to care for both her brother and her grandmother had been misplaced. They weren't 3 individuals struggling with separate challenges. They had become a family unit where each member's strengths compensated for the other's needs. Daniel's need for routine provided stability for Rose's memory issues. Rose's unconditional acceptance gave Daniel confidence to try new things. Sarah's role had evolved from caregiver to coordinator, helping orchestrate a family dynamic that worked for everyone. Later that night, after helping Rose get ready for bed with her injured wrist, Sarah found Daniel in his room working on a new puzzle, a complex landscape that would take weeks to complete. "Daniel," she said, sitting on the edge of his bed, "I want you to know how proud I am of you."
Not just for today, but for everything you've brought to our family."
Daniel looked up from his puzzle, considering her words with his usual seriousness. "I like being part of a family that helps each other. It makes me feel important, not just different." Sarah felt tears well up in her eyes. "You are important, Daniel. We're all better people because you're here with us." Daniel smiled, an expression of pure contentment that transformed his entire face. "I think Mom and Dad would be happy that we found each other." "I think you're absolutely right," Sarah agreed, kissing his forehead goodnight as she turned off his light. Daniel made one final observation that perfectly captured how much their lives had all changed for the better. "Sarah, tomorrow I want to start a new puzzle with Grandma Rose, something with bright colors that will be easy for her to see, but still interesting for both of us to work on." "That sounds perfect, Daniel. Good night." "Good night, Sarah. Thank you for making our family work so well." Sarah closed his door gently, realizing that her little brother had just perfectly articulated what she had been struggling to understand. They hadn't just created a living arrangement. They had built a family that truly worked, where everyone's unique needs and abilities contributed to something beautiful and strong. Spring brought unexpected changes that tested the strength of the family bonds Sarah, Daniel, and Grandma Rose had built over the winter months. The first challenge came when Daniel's supervisor at the grocery store, Mr. Jim, announced his retirement. For most employees, a management change would be an adjustment, but for Daniel, whose sense of security depended heavily on consistent routines and familiar faces, the news was devastating. Sarah first learned about the problem when she received a call from the store manager explaining that Daniel had become overwhelmed during his shift and was asking for his sister. She found him in the employee break room, sitting rigidly in a corner chair, with his hands pressed firmly over his ears, his face pale with anxiety. "The new supervisor wants to change everything," Daniel said, without looking up when Sarah sat beside him. "She says my way of bagging groceries takes too long, and she wants me to work different days. But I always work Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's my schedule." Sarah's heart ached seeing her brother's distress. Over the past 6 months, she had watched him gain confidence and find joy in his work routine. The grocery store had been more than just a job, it was a place where he felt competent and valued. "What exactly does the new supervisor want to change?" Sarah asked gently. Daniel pulled his hands away from his ears and retrieved a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. It was a new schedule, showing him working different days and different hours. With a note about improving efficiency and customer service, Sarah studied the changes, recognizing immediately why they would be problematic for Daniel. The new schedule would disrupt his entire weekly routine, affecting not just his work, but his time with Grandma Rose and his evening puzzle activities that helped him unwind from each day. "Let me talk to the manager," Sarah suggested. "Maybe we can help the new supervisor understand why your current schedule works so well." The conversation with the store manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, was more challenging than Sarah had anticipated. The new supervisor, Jennifer Walsh, was young and ambitious, focused on implementing efficiency improvements that she believed would increase customer satisfaction scores. "I understand that Daniel has special needs," Jennifer explained when they met the following day, "but I can't make exceptions that might impact our service standards. Other employees manage to work flexible schedules." Sarah took a deep breath, drawing on everything she had learned about advocating for Daniel's needs while acknowledging legitimate business concerns. "I appreciate your focus on customer service, but Daniel's consistency and attention to detail actually contribute to customer satisfaction. He has regular customers who specifically choose his checkout line because they know their groceries will be handled carefully." "That may be true," Jennifer replied, "but efficiency is equally important. When Daniel takes extra time with each customer, it creates longer lines." It was Grandma Rose who provided the breakthrough insight that evening when Sarah was discussing the situation at home. Despite her memory challenges, Rose had moments of surprising clarity, particularly when it came to understanding people and relationships. "That young supervisor is probably scared," Rose observed while working on a puzzle. With Daniel, new managers often change things to prove they're in charge, not because the changes are actually needed. Daniel looked up from the puzzle pieces he was sorting. "Like when I started at the new store and I wanted to do everything exactly like my old store, even when the new way might work better." "Exactly like that," Rose agreed. "Sometimes people need to feel heard and understood before they can listen to other ideas." This conversation gave Sarah an idea. Instead of continuing to argue about Daniel's schedule, she decided to invite Jennifer to observe Daniel at work and meet some of his regular customers. She proposed this as a way for Jennifer to gather data about customer satisfaction rather than as advocacy for Daniel specifically. The observation day revealed exactly what Sarah had hoped. Jennifer watched as Daniel carefully bagged groceries, noting how customers waited patiently for his thoroughness and often thanked him specifically for his attention to detail. She saw elderly customers who appreciated his gentleness with fragile items, parents who valued his care with bread and eggs, and regular shoppers who had developed friendly relationships with Daniel over his months of consistent service. Mrs. Patterson, their neighbor, who had become one of Daniel's regular customers, was particularly eloquent when Jennifer asked about her shopping experience. "Daniel remembers that I need my cleaning supplies separated from my food items because of my allergies," Mrs. Patterson explained. "He always asks if I found everything I needed, and he carries my bags to the car when my arthritis is bothering me." Customer service isn't just about speed, it's about treating people like individuals who matter. After the observation, Jennifer asked to speak privately with Sarah and Daniel. Her attitude had noticeably softened, and she seemed genuinely interested in understanding rather than simply implementing changes. "I can see that Daniel provides a different kind of value than I initially recognized," Jennifer admitted. "But I still need to show improvements in our department metrics. Is there a way we can maintain his schedule while also addressing efficiency concerns?" Daniel surprised everyone by speaking up with a solution. "What if I help train other baggers to be more careful with fragile items? I could show them my system for organizing groceries so they don't get damaged. That might help customers be happier, even if the lines are still the same length." Jennifer's face lit up with interest. "That's actually a brilliant idea, Daniel. Would you be comfortable leading short training sessions with new employees?" The proposal transformed Daniel from someone whose needs required accommodation into someone whose expertise could benefit the entire team. He would maintain his preferred schedule while taking on a mentoring role that utilized his attention to detail and his knowledge of proper grocery handling. Over the following weeks, Daniel's training sessions became popular with both new employees and customers who overheard his gentle, detailed explanations of proper bagging techniques. His confidence grew as he realized that his different way of thinking wasn't just acceptable, but valuable to his workplace. The success with Daniel's work, the situation gave Sarah courage to address a personal challenge she had been avoiding. Her position at the library, while comfortable and familiar, had become limiting as her responsibilities at home had expanded. She needed more flexible hours and better benefits to properly support her family, but she was afraid to risk the security of her current job. Rebecca, their support coordinator, helped Sarah realize that her experience advocating for Daniel and managing complex family needs had developed skills that could be valuable in other professional settings. Social service agencies were always looking for staff who understood both the practical and emotional aspects of supporting families with special needs. "You've become an expert at seeing solutions where others see problems," Rebecca observed during one of their regular check-ins. "That's exactly the kind of thinking we need more of in family support services." The job interview process was nerve-wracking for Sarah, who hadn't looked for new employment in over 5 years. But her authentic understanding of what families needed, gained through lived experience rather than textbook learning, impressed the hiring committee at the Regional Family Support Center. When Sarah received the job offer, with better pay, flexible scheduling, and the opportunity to help other families navigate challenges similar to their own, she felt a mixture of excitement and terror about the change. Daniel's reaction to the news was characteristically thoughtful. "Will you still have time for our family dinners and helping Grandma Rose with her puzzles?" "Yes," Sarah assured him. "In fact, this job will give me more flexibility to be home when you and Grandma Rose need me." "Then it sounds like a good change," Daniel concluded. Changes that help families are good changes. Rose, despite her memory challenges, seemed to understand the significance of Sarah's new opportunity. "I'm proud of you for taking care of all of us and still growing in your own life, sweetheart. That's what good families do. They help each other become their best selves." As spring turned towards summer, Sarah reflected on how much their lives had changed since that first nervous meeting at the community center. They had evolved from strangers brought together by circumstance into a family unit that supported each member's growth and challenged each person to become more than they had been alone. The challenges weren't over. Grandma Rose's condition would continue to progress. Daniel would face new situations that tested his coping skills. and Sarah would need to balance her professional growth with her family responsibilities. But they had proven to themselves that they could handle unexpected changes by relying on their love for each other and their commitment to finding solutions that worked for everyone. Most importantly, they had learned that a family's strength isn't measured by the absence of challenges, but by their ability to face those challenges together with creativity, patience, and unwavering support for one another. 1 year after their first meeting at the community center, Sarah stood in the same parking lot, transformed. No longer the timid woman, afraid of her own shadow, she was now bringing her brother Daniel and Grandma Rose to a celebration honoring their shared journey. The Regional Family Support Center was hosting its annual Families of Strength event, recognizing families who had overcome challenges while supporting members with special needs. Sarah's supervisor had nominated them, not only for how far they had come, but for the way they had begun guiding other families through similar transitions. Daniel, dressed in a sharp, deep blue shirt that matched his eyes, clutched a puzzle he had completed just for the event. It depicted 3 generations sitting on a porch, a tribute to their own family dynamic. "Are you nervous about speaking?" Sarah asked as they approached the entrance. "A little nervous, but excited," Daniel replied. "Rebecca says our story might help other families feel less scared about changes." Grandma Rose walked between them, arm linked with Sarah's, her mind clear for once. Though her good days were fewer now, today she was sharp and beaming. "I'm proud of all of us," Rose said, pausing outside the building. "A year ago, we needed help. Now, we help others." Inside, families gathered, parents of children with disabilities, elderly couples supporting one another, siblings stepping into caregiving roles. Mrs. Chen, the social worker who first introduced Sarah and Daniel, greeted them warmly. "It's incredible to see how far you've come," she said, turning to Daniel. "I heard about your training program at the grocery store." Daniel's face lit up. "I've helped train 8 employees. Jennifer says customers are happier now." Sarah's own job at the Family Support Center had become more than she imagined. Her experiences gave her credibility with families navigating complex caregiving roles. She had discovered her quiet observation and resilience had prepared her for work she never even knew existed. As the event began, families took turns sharing their journeys. When their turn came, Sarah's nerves flared, but Daniel surprised her. "I want to go first," he said. "I want to tell people that scary changes can become good changes." Standing at the microphone, Daniel's voice was steady. "I met my sister Sarah. Everything was changing. I didn't know how to live with new people or help someone with memory problems, but I learned that families help each other become better. Sarah showed me that different isn't wrong. Grandma Rose showed me that even if you forget things, you remember love. And I taught them that puzzles and life are about carefully fitting the pieces together." The audience was silent, captivated. Sarah's tears flowed freely. Daniel's message was simple yet profound. He had articulated truths that echoed through every family present. He ended by saying, "Train people at work, help Grandma Rose, and remind Sarah to have fun. We all have strengths, and we use them to help each other." Thunderous applause followed. When Sarah took the microphone, she shared the practical side of their experience, how routine helped Daniel thrive, how his perspective turned problems into puzzles, and how Rose's memory challenges taught them better communication. "Support doesn't mean doing everything for someone," she explained. "It means helping them discover their strengths and find ways to contribute." Afterward, many families approached them. Teenagers spoke with Daniel about their siblings. Parents asked Sarah how to cope. Even Rose, despite her memory struggles, connected with elderly caregivers. An older man asked Rose how she stayed so positive. Response: "I focus on what I can remember. I remember that I'm loved, that I'm useful. Love doesn't need a perfect memory, just a willing heart." As the reception ended, Rebecca approached with a proposal. The state was launching a peer mentorship program to train experienced families to support others. "You'd be trained and compensated," Rebecca explained. "But most importantly, you'd be guiding others through what you've already navigated." Sarah glanced at Daniel and Rose, both already nodding with excitement. "I want to help siblings understand autism isn't a weakness," Daniel said. It's just a different way of thinking, Rose added. Memory problems don't mean you're useless. We still have something to give. On the drive home, their conversation buzzed with plans. A year ago, they were overwhelmed individuals. Now, they were a family, ready to be a beacon for others. As they neared home, Daniel said, "Remember when you first said this is all new to me?" Sarah smiled, recalling her fear back then. "Things are still new sometimes," Daniel said, "but now they feel exciting, not scary, because we help each other through new things." Rose added softly, "A successful family isn't one that avoids challenges. It's one that faces them together and grows stronger." Back home, the porch light glowed warmly. Daniel headed straight for his puzzle table to start a new project. A lighthouse guiding ships through rough waters. It was a perfect metaphor. Their family had become a light for others, navigating storms and showing the way. "Tomorrow, we start helping other families," Rose said, journaling in her favorite chair. "Tomorrow, we keep being a family," Sarah replied. "Helping others is just part of what families do."
I have that.
Night, as Sarah tucked Daniel into bed, he said, "I think Mom and Dad would be proud of the family we became." "I know they would," she whispered, "just like I'm proud of you." "Thank you for showing me that families can be built with love," Daniel said, "even if they don't start out together." Sarah turned off the light. Heart full, their story wasn't ending. It was just beginning, growing to include new families, new stories, and new hope.